Hey, I'm Zach Thompson. Welcome back to the Marketer Exchange. In this episode, we're in the studio at Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee. And I'm talking to John Carroll. He is the Executive Director of City Leadership in Memphis, Tennessee, and the force behind the 901 campaigns like Choose 901. We talk about how he has used storytelling and strategy to build a movement, what he looks for in new marketing talent when he's hiring, and how you can build a career with purpose. Let's get into it. John, how are you? It's good to have you here.
Man, so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We've been talking about this for a year, I think, trying to get you here, and we made it happen. So I appreciate you making the trip.
Well, appreciate you moving from England over here and teaching closer to home. I've had obviously the pleasure of lecturing across the pond or so, over online. But it's more fun being in person, so appreciate you.
Agreed. I think last time we did this, it was pre-pandemic. It was a Zoom guest lecture, and my students got so much out of that, and I know students will today too, and everybody else that's watching will get a whole lot out of it.
And it's pre-pandemic, so people didn't know what Zoom was.
That's right. Yeah, before Zoom was cool. Yeah, we were both trying to figure it out. Man, it's so great to have you. Thanks for coming. Why don't we start with an introduction? Just introduce yourself and tell us a little about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So. My name's John Carroll. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, but had been a serial entrepreneur and got into the nonprofit space. And that's what I do now. I run a nonprofit in Memphis. We started over 15 years ago, and we try to help the good guys do more good, but we serve in a different little space. Most nonprofits are serving a direct need. We come alongside multiple nonprofits, try to get them to work together to try to solve the needs in our community, get that collaborative service to really compound in a way that solves it for some people. So it's fun work.
Yeah, it's amazing work. You moved back to Tennessee and to Memphis specifically in 2004.
Yeah.
What was it about the city of Memphis that really captured you?
Yeah, so I didn't move to Memphis for Memphis or against Memphis or, nowadays, most people in Memphis know me from being in the, philanthropy, nonprofits or, taking care of others kind of space. And so a lot of people think that I moved to Memphis for that reason, that Memphis had a lot of need in that. But that's not the case. And so I'd been living in Dallas for about 5 years and before I moved there, and me and a couple other guys were looking at, there was this company idea of starting as a for-profit business, being in the coffee space. And it's back in 2004. And so it was before kind of, all the big coffee rage was all across the South. But so one of the guys already lived in Memphis. And so it kind of made sense for us to come there as a place to we actually make and roast coffee and have a production, and it's got a great logistics hub. And so it was a business decision to get there. And honestly, when I moved there, I was young and thought I would do this for a couple of years and then I'd move someplace cool. But man, just absolutely fell in love with the city. Totally unexpected. I came from a small town and where I grew up. And so when I grew up, there was nothing to do, but you knew everybody you were doing nothing with. And, it's a great community, nothing to do. And then I moved to Dallas and there was everything to do. And you were never alone, but it was the most lonely place I ever lived because you didn't know anybody. You never did the same thing twice with anybody. It didn't, it didn't feel connected. But Memphis very, very quickly became this place where, everything you did, it felt like you were with your neighbors or your fellow church members or your coworkers or your friends. And it was just hard to be there and not be with people that you knew. And it made you care more about the place. But it also had tons of stuff to do, right? And so it had NBA team and amazing restaurants and just awesome parks and great places to hang out. And so it was a lot of fun living there in that city. And really have come along to be able to say is like, man, I found for me, being in a place like Memphis is one of the great signs of a great community is if you can drink a really great cup of coffee or drink a really great beer, but if your coffee gets cold and your beer get warm, then you're in the right spot. Because what that means is I just ordered a great cup of coffee, but I don't have time to drink it because people keep walking in the coffee shop saying hi, right? Or I've just got a really great beer, a really great meal, and man, it either meal gets cold, beer gets warm because you just keep seeing your friends, you keep hanging out, and so like, man, being in the right place, doing high quality things with high quality people, usually means your food isn't as good, but man, your community's amazing, and that's what happened for me in Memphis, and I just can't imagine living anywhere else.
Man, that's great. So you launched City Leadership in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
What was the aha moment for you that you saw a need there? What was that drove that founding of that?
Yeah, so I'd been in the for-profit space, and then I was dabbling in kind of both worlds. I had a for-profit company that was headquartered in Texas. And so we were making everything in Memphis. And so I was back and forth there. And then I'd gotten into the nonprofit world as well. And because I had some time and I was engaged in both spaces there. And what we found is that the church I was going to had a lot of nonprofit leaders at it. And you'd be having lunch with these guys, or you go see what these ladies are doing at different spaces and go see their spots. And you realize these really big-hearted, amazing people making a lot of impact. But there were some business principles that weren't being applied to some of the work that was there. And it wasn't out of negligence or out of some negative kind of thing of like they think that it's not right to do these kind of things. It's just a lot of it's just awareness, right? They didn't, they went to seminary, they didn't go to business school, or they've never been in a for-profit kind of space, and didn't know how to really leverage a lot of those kind of tools or those kind of abilities and that kind of stuff. And man, in that era time, kind of 07, 08, 09, there was a real big surge where websites, they're nothing like they are today, but like they were going from just these like digital paint pages to like something actually really active. But it was a lot harder then to get high quality photo, high quality video, and really make a nice looking website. It wasn't as easy as it is today. A third grader can take a good photo and probably make a website. Now they've made it so simple. And so what we thought is like, hey, let's, what if we could create a nonprofit that helped other nonprofits? And that was kind of the beginning and the impetus of it. With that was like, there's all these leaders that are out there doing all this really good work. What if we can make their work compound and go faster? And so some of it was project based, but really that was really a Trojan horse. Hey, we'll come help you with your website. But what we really want to do is develop that leader and find ways for that leader to grow, and really believing that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so that was kind of the real beginning of it. Man, it's gotten a little out of control since then. But the hope is that we could bring business principles to the nonprofit space in a very effective way. And I could dive deeper into that, but that's kind of the impetus.
Yeah. So you kind of pivoted away from just offering those websites and towards leadership, focusing more on that. How else has it changed? Congrats on 15 years, by the way. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How else has
a punishment out of it?
Yeah. Commiserations.
Survives.
How has the need changed over that 15 years?
Yeah. So I think everything's gotten a lot more complex in the digital space. And so, one of the biggest issues specifically around marketing, for nonprofits is that there was a time and a season, especially around web, SEO, social media, where before a lot of these companies IPO'd, when there were less companies or less major players into that if you knew the basic skills of those kinds of things, that you could immediately be as good, if not better, than most of your for-profit, competitors, I guess, so to speak, for people's attention more than anything. And then even in the nonprofit space, there was kind of a jump to where, if you had really good stuff there, then you could really stand out and you could get a lot of attention onto your mission and attract more volunteers, more donors, create more care. Because in the nonprofit space, a lot of times what you're marketing towards is not the people that you serve. It's the people that contribute to the resources that allow you to go serve that stuff. And those people are experiencing high quality advertisements from national and international corporations. And so if you as a nonprofit have any sort of lag or quality integration there, then, you are seen less than or not as good as and all that kind of stuff. And especially as, bigger nonprofits come in with more dollars and more resources, they come in and look really, really nice, and that attracts people's attention. And so that's really, really hard to keep up with. At the beginning, you could keep up with that relatively easy and relatively inexpensively. But man, the end zone keeps moving further and further away, and the gap between what is possible to do quickly and financially efficiently versus consistently and at the quality level that digital marketing has become is really, really, really complex. And so today we find it, being able to raise enough money to hire good enough talent and then give them enough resources and then give them enough time to be able to create the quality of things that can get people's attention. It's not impossible, but to say it's complex is probably too simplified of an answer there.
Yeah. So speaking of grabbing people's attention, you guys at City Leadership have developed these campaigns or even brands that have become programs in and of themselves, it seems to me as an outsider.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through the progression of developing and what the work does in each of those different areas? So Choose 901, Teach 901, Serve 901, all of that.
Yeah. So Memphis, Memphis is in the 901 area code for those of you guys who don't know that. And so we've really gravitated on using a 901 nomenclature as a way to really unify the community. 901 was the area code for the whole state of Tennessee at one point. It's been progressively kind of shaved off as more people there. And so it really just kind of defines that southwest corner of the Tennessee now. And so we have in our work with individual organizations, in getting them to collaborate and work together has been one of the key elements that we've been able to provide. So as an individual org that's serving in after-school programs or housing or jobs, or as a school or as in a sports mentorship program, they don't have just like they don't have a full-time web designer to design their websites. So if we bring on a full-time web designer and do all their websites, people can donate to us, create one awesome web designer, and then we can give all of them websites for free, right? But in the same way, there's nobody on their staff that's thinking like they're trying to make their best of their program. How are they going to get all those programs to work together? And so what we found over time is that if we could convince those orgs to work together on the same people, that you can actually move from just serving a day-to-day need to solving some of those needs through that process. So that's the real impetus of creating these kinds of things. And to do that, we had to create brands and campaigns that would allow those organizations to kind of sit underneath, because it's really confusing for an individual when they think about participating or caring about that kind of stuff to say like, hey, here are 20 different names you need to remember, and all these things work together. Like that's really, really hard. And so when we would say things like Choose 901 or Teach 901, it really is representing a larger group of that space. So Choose 901 was originated as our campaign to help about a dozen organizations that were trying to recruit or retain college graduates to do post-college residency programs in typically social work scenarios. So teaching, health-related fields, AmeriCorps, service stuff, all that kind of things. And so So it was a collective campaign to communicate, hey, there's an opportunity for you to invest a season of your life here. But we also surrounded that with this is all the way you'll have fun here while you do it. Because that was a real big millennial issue was millennials in general decide a lot of making all their decisions like, will I enjoy this thing more than I will enjoy that thing? Which is a different generational talk that we can get into.
It's more about the experience, right?
Yeah. So they're choosing between two. They're the first generation really in the history of the world. They made all their decisions not between, what is more safe or less safe or what is more financially stable or less financially stable. It's like, oh, well, I'm financially stable. So what will I enjoy doing this? So I enjoy having sushi or, having steak, right? And so will I enjoy having an iPhone or I enjoy having an Android? It's not like, they're making those kind of conscientious decisions. So when they're thinking about, they've already decided that they want to teach, where am I going to teach? And then once they think every city needs teachers, well, will I enjoy being there? It's a big piece of that. So that was a big piece of the choose stuff. And that's become a real calling card for a lot of people in Memphis that care about Memphis to really say like, well, I already choose Memphis. I'm already here. And so it's become a massive platform in that. But recruiting and retaining teachers needed a campaign that was it was too specific and too big just to hold inside of Choose. So we spun off Teach 901, which is where we got 90 schools collaborating to market school jobs. It's a really interesting marketing scenario. So if you go to a city like New Orleans or Kansas City, you'll end up where there's a lot of charter schools. There's billboards all up and down the streets. They're running radio ads. There's a ton of digital SEO where schools are competing against each other to get teachers to swap and do whatever, because they've got to fill seats. And there's not enough teachers in America to fill the seats. We say it's kind of like playing musical chairs. You have 10 chairs, you have 7 people. The music stops. They just sit wherever they want to, right? And so, but every city is struggling with trying to get people to sit in the right spot, and there's seats going open in education in that space. But what's doubly sad about that is if you've got 50 school networks that all have a full-time marketing person or 2 and marketing budgets to then amplify that competition, and they're spending all those dollars that are for our school system, right? And so, if each school only spent $100,000, right? You're talking millions of dollars annually to compete for the same teachers that are going to sit down somewhere anyways. And so what we've done at Teach 901 is we convinced all those schools to say like, hey, instead of creating marketing campaigns, let's just put all the jobs in one spot. Let's make it really simple for the teachers. And we say, hey, let's make this teacher town instead of Operatorville. Yeah. And let's make it where the teachers are the focus. And they know where they can go. Because as a teacher, if I'm thinking, I want to teach 7th grade science, I really want to look at what are all my options. Well, if I have to go to 50 different websites just to see if there's a thing, or if I'm going all this kind of stuff, it creates a lot of confusion. And in marketing, from the business side, we would always say is a confused mind says no, right? I want to go to the simplicity spot. And so in a really hard to teach area, like any of our 50 largest cities in the United States, I'm confused. I'm not quite sure where to go. I'm not whatever. So not only is your marketing not work, that teacher's more likely to just end up in some other system or a suburb or whatever because they're confused in the marketplace. Where can it be simple? And so by making a collaborative space for that has been really, really helpful. We spend $150,000 a year. One person donates $100,000 a year to that. And then the other $50,000 is generated through donations, people giving us spaces. Some people contribute a couple $100, a year and different kind of stuff there. And we collaborate all of that for all the schools, and none of the schools have to spend a marketing dollar. That can all go back to the classroom. So it's that kind of ingenuity that is bringing business principles, but it doesn't create a revenue. People are like, you should charge people for that. Well, if I had 90 school systems and I charge them all $5,000 for it, see, that would make a lot of money, right? You only have to charge them $1,500 or $1,600 or whatever to make $150,000, but not everybody's going to do it. So then you got to charge more than whatever it costs. And then once everybody doesn't do it, then your site doesn't have all the school listings. And then all of a sudden now those other people have to create competition. And then now the 50 schools that are with me are seeing all those ads going everywhere, and they're going, well, now I need to create ads. And that's how it all falls apart. It's either free for everybody and it's really inexpensive, right? Or you start charging just something to somebody and everything falls apart. I'm getting deep into the weeds onto that one campaign, but that's where I started. Serve 901 actually predates all of this. Before I even started city leadership in the for-profit space, I started asking people if they wanted to come to town just to do volunteer projects. So we'll have about 1,000 college students come every year to do alternative spring break, summer trips, fall break trips, that kind of stuff. We've got a 114-person bunkhouse in town, and they go volunteer at these same nonprofits that are our clients. And so we'll do about 10,000 hours of community service this year. And then they'll tour around, they'll see Memphis and go to the Civil Rights Museum and eat ribs on Beale Street and have a good time. And so, but it's a really, really great deal. Give 901 is our corporate giving campaign. So we've been around long enough where all our 20-year-olds that we've been working with are now 30 and 40-year-olds. And so they want to keep giving, keep being involved. And so we have a corporate area where your business can volunteer, serve, donate, contribute towards this stuff. And then, man, we've created, I think I'm most excited about, our Choose 901 alumni campaign. And so we've got 6 schools. If you graduate from those schools, you become a Choose 901 alumni, so 450 kids a year. Spend the next 10 years with us, and we help them persist through their post-secondary education or training, get those internships, their first job experiences. We recruit them back towards Memphis, get them intertwined, and then we try to help them navigate getting plugged in socially, becoming community leaders in their space. And so we've got 3,153 alumni now and 4,400 students in the pipeline. And so it's really, really great. About 85% of our alumni are coming from places of poverty. And just helping them not only break that cycle for them, but for their family, and to be a part of the community where they're been growing up and care about. And so it's really, really meaningful. And so we've really deemed that as kind of our flagship brand, Choose 901. They get to carry that mark because they are really the future of our community in a big way.
Man, it's such important work and been so successful. Choose 901 specifically has become just went gangbusters. I mean, it's part of the identity of Memphis, I think.
Yes, yeah.
What would you say are some of the factors for the success of that campaign in particular?
Yeah. I think some of it was there was the lack of a place to get positive information in that time when we started, and so there was a local paper that was online. Obviously, they had a website, but there's a paywall to be able to get into that space. And we hit at a time where people were still trying to figure out social media content and where all that fits. But Memphis is a place where the needs of the city are oftentimes a part of the headlines. And those headlines create eyeballs, and those eyeballs get sold. And so there's a lot of value in that in the marketplace. But for the other 65, 70% of people that were looking for other information and content, there was a big opportunity there. And that was not our intention. I wasn't, look at that. 7 out of 10 people are really looking for something positive. Let me create this negative news and all this kind of stuff. What I really thought were 2 things. One is that, if I'm thinking about moving to Memphis and I don't know anything about Memphis, how do I understand the Memphis? And I can't just put a website like, hey, you should come teach here. And Memphis also has, and you just put like a list of everything. And so it's like, we had to create some sort of story or narrative that kind of made sense of that. And, these young adults, 20, 21, 22-year-olds were, they weren't obviously reading the paper. It was very common for them to read digital news and be able to see that kind of stuff. And videos were complex at the time. And so, we just made a video every single week. And what we would do is we would show people who are doing the programs we're recruiting to enjoying themselves in Memphis. So we do a video on the bike lanes, right? Or a video of somebody trying, different barbecue shops, or a video on somebody going to juke joints, right? But that person in that video was a Memphis teacher resident, right? That person in that video was working at St. Jude as a nurse, right? That person in that video was working as a social worker at youth villages. And so we would Trojan horse that video with the type of person that was there. And then what ended up happening is then not only would someone see that in that story and go, oh, that's the program I wanted to do, or that kind of stuff, whatever. But those campaigns would then have something to say like, hey, check out this video that one of our residents is in, blah, 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 talking about whatever. And then even from a recruiting standpoint, you end up on a college campus, you're talking to somebody, hey, I've never been to Memphis, whatever. Like, well, whatever. Well, I'm really into cycling. Oh my gosh, you've got to watch this video. One of our MTR residents is whatever, he's into cycling. And also you see that and you're like, oh, that guy that looks like me and like whatever, and all that kind of stuff. And so that kind of connection of that was really, really interesting. And so we started talking about all these sorts of places, and Memphians really saw that and were like, they saw themselves in a different kind of light. And what really is that in kind of the core, when you break that down, is that, people were asking me for videos about Memphis, but I was like, no. What we need is stories about Memphians. And from a marketing perspective, we would just we just go look at Nike. Nike never makes ads about their shoes. It's always about the athletes. And so you're obsessed with Nike because you are relating to the athlete's story, right? And even like in the Olympics, I'm not obsessed with shot putting, but I will watch the Olympics and there will be some guy and I'll be like crying because I'm like, he's the most amazing person in the world. And now I'm like totally into shot putting and definitely the Olympics, right? And so I care about the Olympics because I care about this guy. I hear his story about how he went through this whole deal. And I'm probably never going to like record, shot putting and like watch it every week or whatever. But man, that whole thing endears me to go like, I can't miss the Olympics, right? And I think that when we started doing those kind of things, it not only made it really effective marketing for Memphis, but it really helped people, appreciate this place because it's easy to criticize something, that is not, right? Like even like a restaurant, right? It's like, oh, this restaurant, corporate America, blah, blah, blah. But if like you sat down with like the owner or like the executive or the whatever, they'd be like, it gets real human real quick. And 99 times out of 100, you sit down with somebody or talking to somebody and they're like, I'm so sorry that you had that brand experience and let me make that right for you. Or you really hear the story about why they did that thing and you're like, I never wanted to eat chicken fingers or whatever, but like I heard the story of this guy and how he pulled through whatever. And now I'm like, I love eating here because of this person. It's not because of the brand. And I think that people fell in love with Memphis in that way. And I think Memphians fell in love with their city in a way because there had been just such a big opportunity for stories like that. And then people were able to equate that with our brand. And then they just started like saying like, well, I choose 901. Saying like, they're whatever. They're 27. They've never lived anywhere else. And they're like, I don't have to move here. I'm already doing this. Or they're 47 and they're in their community, or they're 67 and they've been here their whole life. And it was an easy way for them to say like, I care about this place too. I believe in this place. In the same way that somebody would wear, their Tennessee sweatshirt here around campus, you know what I'm saying? And those kind of things. It's so funny. We happen to be recording on Monday, a couple of days after a loss, which is heartbreaking. And so but man, this campus is covered with people smiling, wearing tons of Tennessee gear, right? And looking really happy. And they're like, hey, win or lose, we're here in this community and we're doing this stuff. And I'm proud that I'm still Tennessean. And I think that's what we helped instill in Memphis, in some ways by accident, or let's say initially by accident, because it was really from marketing to try to get into whatever. But people started being like, hey, this is me too. And I was like, oh, wait a second. why are there 150,000 people on our website? We were just trying to get 300 or 400 people to move here a year. Like, what, our web traffic went from like 30, 40,000 people on college campuses around the, an 8-hour drive in Memphis was kind of our target, and like 3,000 or 4,000 people in Memphis. And I was like, oh, it's probably like just me and my friends and like some random people, right? And then within the next year, it was like 30, 40,000 people on college campus, it's like 60, like whatever. And then all of a sudden it was like 160 and then 460, right? And so like it just kept getting crazy. And what we found was we just really tapped into that 70%.
Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of recruiting people to Memphis? Like, if you've spoken about this before, I think it's such an important piece of the puzzle. Just talk a little bit more about that, why that's important from a poverty alleviation standpoint, recruiting graduates specifically to Memphis.
Yeah, so it's recruiting and retention. Memphis has a ton of awesome people from every socioeconomic background. They have a ton of potential with high impact into this space. But the reality of it is that Memphis is not one of the 5 major cities that you would assume that you would have a blast in, and that there is significant, post-college, like, economic opportunity. For that, those two things to overlap, there's only a few cities that, that everyone would, you just start, hey, make a list or whatever. Like if we asked your classroom to write down 5 cities, there would be some significant overlap, of where those kind of things are. And so even though Memphis does have those things, people don't assume it about it. And the data really back that up. So when we started, we surveyed 1,000 college students at a bunch of colleges within a 4 to 8 hour drive of Memphis. And what we really found was that, 12 out of 100 college students thought Memphis was awesome, right? And 7 or 8 out of 100 thought Memphis was not awesome. And like 81 out of 100 were like, I don't know anything about Memphis. And so we're like, okay, like if you don't know anything about it, well, then you're definitely not sitting around going, and my dream is to move to Memphis, right? And so Memphis has, it has a large state school, obviously, has a really couple of great private institutions, an awesome HBCU. And so we're graduating a lot of talent there. But obviously there's way more people graduating, just from other colleges and other places and all that kind of stuff. And so you just got to be on their radar to be able to recruit that stuff in. So that became really important, was saying, is like, hey, let's create the content, let's create the marketing that allows people to consider this place. But what really mattered, it was in 2 ways. One was that from a social work scenario, we had the dollars, the philanthropic investment to create 100 opportunities to come teach in this space, or 50 social work jobs over here, or another 50 in healthcare over here, or another 100 over there, these AmeriCorps jobs. We weren't getting enough quantity or quality of applicants in that space. So you're really not being able to leverage tens of millions of philanthropic dollars and all these positions going unfilled. And most of these positions, you had to have a college degree and in this kind of deal. So recruiting and making sure those 300 or 400 positions were full every year did a couple of things. One, maximize those philanthropic dollars. 2, it maximized the immediate impact that they were doing and serving in wherever they were in that space, which immediately comes back to what you're saying. It starts making an impact on poverty and social equality and that kind of stuff into that. So that becomes a really, really big deal, making sure that those jobs are actually filled. But then 3, the most likely time you are to move to a new city in America is between the ages of 21 and 27. So that's where I could like mass market people and try to get them whatever. If I can get you here at 21 or 22 to make a 1 to 4 year paid commitment here, well, then you're way more likely to live here in the long term. And I would love to live in a community that every year is continuously upgraded with people who maybe end up being realtors or restaurant owners or accountants or lawyers or whatever. But man, people that are willing to invest a season of their life, giving back to others and contributing, those are the kind of people I want to be my neighbors, right? Not, it doesn't have to be like they had to do it in that season that they had to be my neighbor, right? But man, those kind of people really make great community members, really economic conscious neighbors. And doesn't mean that they're all one political one way or one political another. But that's just a really good, healthy ingredient to have for your community into that. On top of that, and where we found a really big opportunity is that back to that kind of, I'm not assuming Memphis is a place I want to go. AutoZone headquartered in Memphis, International Paper headquartered in Memphis, Silvamo headquartered in Memphis, Alsac, St. Jude obviously headquartered in Memphis, FedEx headquartered in Memphis. They have thousands and thousands of jobs every year for college graduates, people coming out with their masters, that kind of stuff. And so what I found is like, oh, the people that are coming here to do these teaching, whatever, they have the friends that could fill these other roles. And if we actually don't market that together, we're going to lose. It's either we're going to get both of those people or we're going to get neither one. So imagine if I would decide, like, hey, I'm going to spend the next 2 to 4 years of my life teaching in a high poverty school and investing in my life before I go to law school, right? That's what I said. And you and I are roommates in college, and you decided that, well, I'm an engineer and I need an engineering job. And we love going to college, love doing whatever, but you've got an engineer job interview in Nashville or Atlanta or Dallas. There's teaching opportunities in every one of those cities. And so we're like, hey, let's keep the party going. Let's keep hanging out. Let's keep whatever. Hey, I'm moving to Atlanta. Why don't you, if you're going to teach, why don't you come teach there? Well, I'm going to end up there, right? It's really easy for me to do that. And so if I can't convince you to apply for a job in Memphis, then we're going to both end up in Atlanta. Yeah. But man, if I can get you a job opportunity of being an engineer, wherever, right, in Memphis, then it's way easier for me to be able to come there. And so that ends up being a twofer, right? And so it could be a pipeline for that, where it's like, when I get you guys both here the first year, now then I'm using that market. Hey, post about your stuff. I'm incentivizing you to post on social, talk to whatever. Hey, who do you know that needs to come here? Because you're likely friends with people that would want to come hang out with you guys again, or whatever, visit. Yeah. Hey, invite your friends in town, come to whatever. All that's marketing, right? And so it's all that interaction where people want to be in that space. And if you've got the right social workers, you can make the social impact, and then they are the most likely people to stay there over the long haul. And we see that happening all the time, right? A lot of my friends that are in their 30s are people we recruited here in their 20s. They're still there in Memphis. A lot of them are not in the original role that they were in, or even at the same org, or even in the same field, but they're Memphians now. And man, they live with the same kind of heart. But they came in with a roommate or a friend or whatever, and they're in the for-profit space. And that really helps those things go. And if your local companies don't have all their jobs filled, well, then they're going to send those jobs to another city, right? They're going to go put those in Dallas or Houston or somewhere else where it's easier. There's just enough mass people where you can rob Peter and pay Paul and get engineers or whatever you want from that space. And then those dollars just stay in that community. And if you don't have job opportunities there, well, then when you get these kids out of poverty and they get these degrees and they get these opportunities, well, then they end up having to move to Dallas too, because the job moved there because you couldn't fill it here. And that's just going to perpetuate that there's not people buying a house in that community, spending dollars, restaurant, needing your services, needing a new roof or whatever those things are. And you just continue that whole perpetual life cycle. So it all works hand in hand. You've got to serve it to help them get out of it, but you got to hit the economic need now to fill it. So there's still an opportunity there later, and you're keeping all those dollars, tax dollars, into that space.
So apart from people actually moving to Memphis is a big part of your recruitment efforts. Apart from people moving there, what are some of the other metrics that you guys are measuring related to those campaigns? So Choose 901, Give 901, Teach 901.
Yeah, so we're always looking for eyeballs on our websites and where things are growth and trafficking, being able to see, really interesting is where does traffic come from? Why does it come from that? What are the response rates to those different kinds of things? Those are all really big, interesting pieces of that. New users, subscribers, unsubscribes is a big thing, but a lot of our content is you're subscribing because you're looking at moving here. And so it's trying to figure out do you keep people interested? Well, I subscribed because I was looking for a job, and now I've got a job. I don't know if I need the same content. And so where does that kind of stuff really kind of flow in to that space? But our big thing right now is trying to see how long can we get you to actually watch a video. Everything's just video now, and so seeing the longevity of that is a really big deal. And then we continuously watch geography, right? So where are these hotbeds of people looking at different kinds of stuff? Like we have found over time that some kids from Memphis will end up at some random school that we don't know very well. And then they end up being very pro Memphis. And then you'll end up all of a sudden it's like, there's nobody at that college campus for a whole year that's ever been on your website. And then next year there's like 12, and next year there's like 50. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a little something right there. And you think, what does 50 people mean? 50 people could mean 15, 20 people moving to your city. I promise you, there's not a mayor of 50 largest cities in the country right now that would go, there's 20 people want to move to my city. Who do I talk to? How do I call? How do whatever? I will like what? And so people are really interested where that happens. And so that's some really fun stuff to kind of watch.
I think we need a Vol 901. That's your next campaign, Vols 901.
Dude, no, all the Vols need to just come back to the 901. We send a lot of them up here, so it's a great place. And I'm a big Vol fan, so
nice.
Yeah.
As these campaigns have matured over time, how have you shifted in terms of targeting new audiences?
Yeah, so one is our biggest shift has been just keeping the people that we recruit and retain in having that right thing to be able to matriculate with them in their next season of life. And even for me, right? I mean, I started all this stuff, I was 32, now I'm 48, right? And so so some of it's just keeping up with, where people are heading into that space. That's been the biggest deal. I think on the other side is trying to really keep up more with the culture of how people are experiencing these kinds of things. And, knowing that some of these cultures want to be more formal. Some people want to be more relaxed. Some people want to be more sarcastic. Some people want to be more trendy, and that's been the hardest thing, I think, more than anything, is having enough diversity internally to relate to all the different sorts of particulars. And definitely from marketing, this is really, really complex, is hitting all those different age groups with the right vocabulary, the right style, the right momentum, the stuff that I can get 18 to 26-year-olds to watch, you cannot get 30 and 40-year-olds to watch. And I need my 30 and 40-year-olds to be highly engaged because they become mentors and volunteers and servers, and they donate towards the mission of what we're doing. So, and they want to be connected to our stuff. But if I post stuff that 40 and 50-year-olds are really into, I will lose my audience of the 20-year-old that they want to help. And that becomes really, really complex. People will be like, oh, man, I don't know why you posted that. And I'll be like, because it's not for you. I promise you, right? And from a marketing kind of deal, and you're trying to educate them in a way, but you don't want to disenfranchise them because they like their Choose That One bumper sticker. They like their shirt. They like being a part of what's hip and what's cool. It's funny, the 50 to 60-year-olds, actually, they'll just kind of because their kids are usually the ones we're targeting, they kind of feel the most comfortable a lot of times with whatever's on the edge because they've been experiencing it firsthand. They follow their own kids' social media, they kind of whatever. And so they're kind of the first to be like, yeah, skippity or whatever. And so they'll jump into all that kind of stuff, and they kind of won't use it the right way, but they'll feel totally okay with it, like it and comment and laugh and all that kind of stuff. Whereas there's just that generation gap there in the middle that's kind of funny. Their kids are too young to kind of be into what's cool right now, and so they're still using the old stuff. So that part's really hard.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's interesting, and we say it's chess, not checkers, right? And so it's way more complex, and it's way harder than for-profit. It's a totally different deal. Marketing and for-profit. No, I'm not trying to say it's just the easiest thing in the world, but it's way less complex, and way more straightforward. So
this is one thing I want to ask you about was you've had your hand in the business world. You've also worked in nonprofit for a long time. What are the key differences that you've seen in developing a truly purpose-built brand in nonprofit? Because a lot of businesses talk about purpose,
yeah,
but don't walk it out. So what are some of those key differences?
Yeah. So, the key difference, in marketing for a for-profit, right? Like you look at kind of markets, like I would look at a market and go like, okay, what does it take for mass marketing to be effective? How big is that audience group? Can I afford to market my product to a mass market, right? Can I afford financially to do that and reach enough people? And if I do reach enough people, do they have access to my product in a way that you can respond to mass market, which I don't know what y'all do now. You probably have updated stats, but when we did this stuff, we would always look at mass marketing is 0.3% effective. So whatever you're doing in mass, like just giving the people the opportunity, whatever, if you gave 1,000 people the opportunity to buy your product, 3 should buy it if you are actually marketing to your target demo and you hit them at an effectability they have, whatever. So like whatever it costs to market to 1,000, you should be able to get 3, right? So obviously that scales 10,000, 100,000, million, whatever. And so as we look for that and that kind of stuff, and if your marketing is, it's either your marketing isn't good or you aren't aiming towards your target audience, and then can you repeat financially to be able to make that stuff? And does your margin of your product, your cost of goods sold, and the amount of money you make, allow that flywheel to keep getting perpetuated? That's it. It's just science and reach and whatever, and you're just playing the game into that kind of stuff, and you're either not good at your margin, your ad, or aiming it towards your target demo. That's it. It's one of those kind of things. In the nonprofit space, we have to serve everybody. We have to serve everybody, every personality, every whatever. You can't just rely on a 0.3% return. Like, you're serving every Memphian that are totally different, financially, politically, racially, socially, economically, just, age-wise, age demographics, preferences, all that kind of stuff, whatever. And so you have to serve all of them, and then you're talking about something that they're all associated with and that they experience different. And it's kind of like if I was holding a coin between us and you're like, man, this coin's got a head on it. I'd be like, no, it's got a building on it, right? And so like we're looking, I'm like, no, it's a building coin. No, it's a head coin, right? And so like, and they're both talking about the same coin. And imagine that with Memphis, but with a bunch of different sides of it. So it's really, really complex to be able to do all that kind of stuff. And then the better you are in the better you are in the for-profit space, you make more money, and then you can actually get better. And it's really, really hard to play catch up, right? As another organization and penetrate the market space. In the nonprofit space, the better you are, the more demand you create for your services, which means you have to raise more money, which means you have to and then you can end up failing people, which then ends up means you break the service trust of people, right? And you kind of end up perpetually just hitting people up for money. And they're like, I just gave you 50 grand. Why do you need 50 more grand? I was like, because that 50 grand was so effective. We now have 100 more people needing our services. I got to hire somebody else. And so I need 50 more. They're like, man, I can't do it. And the cost goes up, right? So in the for-profit space, cost goes up. Well, the product cost goes up a quarter, right? Or $1 or whatever it is, right? In the nonprofit space, if a donor gives you 50 grand 5 years in a row, and you go back to him and say, hey, inflation, whatever, 50 grand is really just 40 grand, and I need 60 grand from you to really whatever. They're like, are you so ungrateful? I don't it's hard for them to I'm giving you 50 grand. It's a really big deal, but every year, 50 grand is no longer enough. So even if they said, I'm going to give you 50 grand forever, well, then the next year, I at least have to get 3 or 4 grand from someone else just to make that 50 grand the same. Not counting if I'm actually good steward of that, it's whatever. So what we do is we try to help people understand the difference between ROI, your return on investment, and ROG is what we call it. So I call it return on generosity, and really try to get into the business principles of those kind of things and letting people see like, hey, when you invest here, you create returns and you create opportunity for more investment. Same thing with ROI, right? It creates returns. Opportunity. People are like, man, I want to buy more of that stock because it creates your returns. Like, hey, golly, I want to give more charitably here, and I want to give more into this space because it creates a better return for my generosity.
So a big part of what you do is marketing Memphis, but also you recruit a lot to Memphis, people for roles in your organization, but also other organizations. And a lot of folks that will be listening to this will be maybe folks who are about to graduate or people who are getting into marketing roles.
Internship or that kind of stuff.
What are some of the things that you look for? What makes somebody really stand out in an interview process or in a portfolio that you're looking at? What makes people stand out when they're looking for a marketing role?
Man, great question. I think teachability is hunger, curiosity is a real big piece of that. one of the things that I try to tell a lot of people, especially when they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, you're just embarking into the decade of really figuring out who you really are and what you really want to do. And they think that school was that whole space. Like school just gave them the tools to now figure themselves out. And so what I'm hoping for, like if you're kind of doing an internship with us, you'll hear me say, you'll probably end up with a conversation with me at some point before we hire you. And I say this to everybody, it's like, interns are the only people on our staff that have the exact same job description as me, which is to make everyone else on our team successful. You have, I'm responsible at the end of the day for everything. So you're not responsible, but your job is the same as me. I come to work every single day and think, all right, how do I make these other 20 people super successful at their jobs? And that's exactly what an intern gets to do. So interns are like, I want to be an intern. I want to be a CEO one day. I want to be an exec. Well, then you should go do as many internships as possible. And you go to work and you have to be as proactive and activated as possible to go pursue and think like, my whole job is to make everyone else successful. And if you can fall in love with making everyone else successful in a proactive way, not just reactive. You have to be reactive as a CEO as well, right? People come to my office all the time and have needs and have whatever. But if you can learn enough about a place to learn how to be proactive into that deal, you are just embarking into the skill sets that you need to be as a CEO. And so that's a really big component, as you guys are looking for that. From the, one of the things I would just say too is, if you need to get paid to do an internship, you're going to limit the opportunities that you could have into that space, especially into the nonprofit space. Or if you need a bunch of money into that, people are like, man, I'm going to go make some money doing it. If your goal is to make money, then you're missing out on making the connections and getting the experience. And so I would just challenge you is live in a way the other 9 months of the year where you can stock up, $400 or $500 so that you can go pursue the opportunity, whether it's in Memphis or in England or in San Francisco or whatever, where, being able to afford rent or being able to get out there, all that kind of stuff doesn't become a barrier to be able to get to the opportunity and the network that you can be able to get in that space. Because a lot of these internships, they're either not going to pay enough or they're not going to do whatever for you to be able to make all those kind of needs in that space. And man, if I met somebody who was like, I just want to learn, put me in whatever, all that kind of space, we're going to give them opportunity. And hopefully they show up every day with that same sort of attitude and give that same sort of energy. Usually they'll come in a little timid, a little shy, a little whatever. By the time they come out of their shell, it's like 2 weeks left in their internship. And they're kind of like, most interns have a lot of regret. They're, golly, I wish I would have just whatever at the beginning of that kind of stuff. The other thing too is I just told somebody, I had a young lady from TCU reach out to me about coming to intern with us for the next summer. And she has another opportunity where they do this one big project for the whole summer. And, but she wants to be in digital marketing space and digital communication, digital kind of whatever. And man, I just don't know anybody who's doing one big project, especially at your age, or anybody's going to trust you with one big project in your 20s. Like you're going to have to be the phenom. Like in your 20s, you're going to spend most of your time doing one big project an hour. Yeah. And so like you need to go to a place, whether you come here or go where you can do as many reps as possible, where somebody's going to actually give you some real responsibility that has some real, like we want to give you some rope, not enough rope to hang yourself, right? Or to ruin our organization, but we want to give you enough rope where you're actually out there doing it. And you want to do it as many times as possible. If you're going to do an internship where you get to, post once a week even, don't go do that. Like you can already post socially on your own Instagram. You can create your own fake Instagram account and learn how to do that faster than whatever. But if you can get someplace where you can really contribute and then you just keep coming to every single meeting and raising your hand, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. And so wherever you can get the job, then man, just keep pushing yourselves, keep pursuing responsibility. Responsibility is the thing that, like I have a ton of responsibility. It's the thing you'll have in your job, right? Your job has it. So what happens is your generation is like, I'm not raising my hand. I don't want that responsibility. And so you just think they're like, I'm getting paid the same no matter what. Well, you ain't gonna get paid at some point if you're not gonna take on responsibility. And you want to build that build those reps where you can take that on and not be scared. And so, man, just keep raising your hand, keep taking responsibility, volunteer in your orgs in school, practice on your own stuff, post on your own LinkedIn 3 times a week right now while you're in school, stuff that you're learning, building those kind of reps, and that kind of stuff. It'll give you a lot of that space, as you're working on it. And then even edit your own videos, come up with your own, if you don't want your friends to see it, come up with your own fake TikTok or Instagram account or private, whatever, and just keep making the content that you would share for something else in some of that space. Nobody's stopping you. Like, I could make a commercial right now for any brand in the world right now. Like, there's enough content on the internet where I could make a voiceover, do whatever. I could make anything that would, they'd be like, man, if they would just go ahead and do it. Who's stopping you? Just go ahead and do it. And if you're like, well, I wish I could just make videos like that every single week. Do it right now. If you show up at my office with 12 videos you made over the last 12 weeks that you would have put on TikTok for 12 different brands and how you understood it, and I was able to see it, they don't have to be perfect. If I just saw that effort, I go, yep, I want that person. I would go out and raise money for that person. Right? I'd be like, yes, that person can come in. I'd be convincing you to drop out of school and come work for. I would probably hire you in that space, right? Or to do school, whatever. You get what I'm saying? So, but that's the type of person that would have a really hard time not being employed. Like, they would have to try really hard. Yeah, because we'd be begging them.
Hit the ground running, so don't waste time on an internship. Hit the ground
Week
running,
one,
lots of reps. Get the material.
Take
out there.
jobs and get as many reps as possible, and don't wait till somebody asks you to. Just go ahead and do it on your own.
You touched on it there too, but I wanted to ask you about your leadership style and what you see being good leadership. You've talked about maximizing the gifts of the people around you. Talk to me a little about your leadership style and what you see as good leadership.
Yeah, so I define leadership as taking initiative for the benefit of others. And so there's some language out there that gets kind of, everybody's a leader, all that kind of stuff. That's not true. You can exhibit leadership in certain scenarios, different kinds of stuff, and you have to be your own self-leader, right? Like into some whatever. But being in community and group leaders and those kind of things, that's a different kinds of pieces of that puzzle. But I think for me, one of the things that I really, really push is that I want you to know yourself really well, and then I want to understand what you know of yourself, and I want to experience you, and I want you to know me really well. I want you to know, like, hey, here's my gifts and here's my weaknesses. And so, like, man, I do move fast. I do have a lot of ideas. I do like whatever, but it creates other weaknesses in that space, and because I want you to have grace for that, and I want to have grace for your stuff. And ultimately, what I found is that the more that we can know each other, and the more that we know each other, I know that sounds weird, but there's two different things there. Then that builds a lot of trust. And we say in our office all the time, trust equals efficiency. And in our game, man, time is what we're buying. I'm raising money to buy people's time to invest it into our community, right? Time's the most valuable commodity we've got in there. And so then trust becomes a multiplier of that time. And so then the more that we know each other and the more that we are connected in that creates that trust. And that's really the kind of key component that I found in that. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but that's kind of the core of it.
I would imagine 22-year-old me or even 40-something-year-old me looking at what you've built and look at this amazing organization and all this effort that you've put in and this hugely impactful, organization that you've made in all these campaigns. So for a 22-year-old out there who's thinking, how can I ever do something so impactful? What advice would you give to somebody like that in that situation?
Man, I think, one of the things I would just say is that some people might like what we're doing and going like, oh, that's a tiny little deal. Like, it doesn't, like, even if you look at our socials, right? Like, if you look at our numbers, people are like, a couple 100,000 people on Instagram. Well, when you get localized, the density rate is it'd be the equivalent of having like 80 million people, nationally or something, if you looked at the ratio of population kind of stuff. And so, but I think that one of the things I would just tell you is that, some of y'all are thinking, man, you want to make a much bigger impact. Go do it. And don't be afraid. Go try it. Go into that space. But, and then some of y'all are worried about, being able to do all this kind of stuff. And I would say to both of y'all that you're thinking there's this leadership maxim that's been said a couple of different ways by different people over the years. But what we say is that people people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, and people underestimate what they can accomplish in 5 years, or definitely in 10 years. And I think the reality is that people look at, like, the people who think they can't do this think like, there's no way I could do that in a year. Right. You cannot. You cannot do what took us 15 years in a year. You just can't do it. Even doesn't matter if your social media got bigger or whatever. You cannot have the community influence, the impact, change all the lives and all that kind of stuff. That's impossible. That is only the product of really, really long compounding interest into that space, right? And the people who think that they're going to overshoot whatever, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's going to take a while. And I would just challenge you is to, whatever your big goals and dreams are, is to start laying them out over 5, 10, or 15-year horizons and start thinking about it. And then think about it in the sense of low. Like, it's that compounding multiplier comes later. You add, and all of a sudden it just goes to multiplication in year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, in years 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's where it really starts, to really, really go, right? Trader Joe's, no, if you're familiar with Trader Joe's, there's like 800 of those stores around or whatever. 20 years in, they had 13. 35 years in, they had like 100. Now they're like 55 years in, or 45 years in or whatever, and they've got like 800, right? And so that multiplied effect really, really goes, as you think about those kind of things and into that space. And so, man, it's not that most people this young underestimate what they can do in 5 to 10 years. They just don't even estimate. They only think about, can I be that today? Can I be that tomorrow? Could I be that by the time I graduate? I mean, that's just the wrong way to look at it.
One of the things I've noticed in spending time with you over the years is your positivity switch, or your is always on. Your optimism switch is always on. I've never seen you have a moment where you weren't just super positive. So what is the secrets of that first? And what role has that played in your success?
We say around the office all the time, like, what's the best that can happen? Yeah. And I think that's just a totally different mindset than trying something that, like, what's the worst that it's not even like, all right, how bad could this possibly, it's like, what's the best? Like, if we tried this and, a bunch of people really liked it, and they moved here, like that's awesome. Then we should try it. If like the best that could happen is like, well, your mom sees it. Well, like, let's try something else. Saying like, yeah, I love my mom, right? It's like, but it's like, that's not the goal. Like, I'm not working, for that. Right. And so, so I think bringing that to it, the real key though is that when I moved to Memphis, I really liked the place, but a lot of Memphians I met, I always say is that I never learned anything bad about Memphis until I moved to Memphis and met Memphians. They were the first ones telling me something negative about it. And I was like, why does everybody live here or whatever? And it's so funny. They were the first and the quickest and whatever to dog Memphis. But what's funny about it is that if someone outside of Memphis or someone ever talked bad about it, they were the first ones to defend it and kind of whatever. And I call it kind of like, it's kind of the big brother thing or the cousin kind of thing, right? You know what I'm saying? We, obviously I know you're a brother, like you talk bad about your brother, right? You know what I'm saying? But you could, right? Like you'd be like, oh, my brother's this and my brother's that, that's whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like you could, whatever. But if I talk about it, you're like, what'd you say about my brother? Right here, like, you know what I'm saying? And it's funny about that, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we remember those kind of things as kids and those kind of things. And I think that's the way Memphians really are. And what I realized is that they love this place and they felt like they were only talking about the criticism. Well, then once you get them talking about all the positive stuff, what you realize is that pessimism, pushes people away, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no collaboration, no multiplication if people aren't coming together. And optimism really draws people in. And the reality of it is true. You can see it over in Neyland Stadium, right? It said like, man, if we're winning games, you can't get a seat and those seats are expensive. But if we just started the season like 0-4, I mean, you can't give those tickets away, right? Because nobody's coming in to fill the stadium and all that kind of stuff. And so optimism is a really, really, really powerful thing. As you move through anything, it makes a lot of sense anywhere. And I think in our community, it's a piece of it. And so for me, I've just kind of always just been that way of like, and not allowing myself to be defined by something not working out. I don't even call it failure. Like you're just trying stuff. Like you're just trying, and then something's going to work. And so like, you just can't do anything without, failure is such a bad word for it, but you can't do anything without trying it and not being successful until it is successful. People that are successful in their first try, I would not trust them at all to run anything significant, because most things take 40, 50, 60 attempts to make something work right.
Yeah, you got to get the reps in.
Yeah, and so then you got to believe that it's worth the effort, And I think more than anything is like, man, there's so many optimistic people that are successful and whatever. It's just because they are willing to put the hard work into to get over the point to actually turn into, an overnight success is the hard work of failing for 10 years. Yeah, it's always overnight to everyone else, and they don't realize how hard you've been working on it for a decade.
I think positivity would be the first word. If I had to choose two words to describe you, one would be positive and the other one would be purpose, that you seem to just absolutely know in your core what your purpose is. How did you find that out? And what would you recommend for other people to do to try to figure out what is my purpose? What is my sense? Give me a sense of direction. How can I find that?
Yeah, I think so. So part of that is connected to my faith. And I think that, I grew up in the South, and so everyone who grows up in the South is, supposedly a Christian. And so for me, it was that was not what I was really looking at in my life. But as I got older, and as I was starting to realize what really mattered to people and to other things, is that was I really enjoyed the feeling that I got when I helped other people. And later on in my life, in my 20s, I really connected that to realize that, there's this different piece of my faith that is not connected to actually me trying to be. I always thought my faith was connected to I needed to be perfect because Jesus was perfect. And so it was really hard for me to be connected to my faith in that space, because I knew clearly that I was not perfect. But later on, when I realized like, no. It's actually I attempt to love my neighbor as I love myself, right? And so I needed to love myself some and realize that, hey, it's okay for me not to be perfect. And that helped me love myself. And then that gave to a thing of like going like, then nobody's perfect. And so then my expectation doesn't need to be is just if I'm waiting for other people in my life to earn my love by their perfection, well, I'm going to be really lonely because no one's perfect. And I know deep down I'm not perfect, right? And so once I realized to accept my lack of perfection, and then I could immediately accept everybody else's, and I was like, well, then let's just have fun doing life together into that space. And so then it was, okay, well then, hey, how do I make as many things on this world be better than they can be? And that just became my purpose, was just like, hey, I want to do things really, really well because, I just enjoy that. I enjoy living in that way, and I want other people to share in that because I think they will enjoy it. And then it was trying to figure out how to scale that out. Bringing that back to is like, we say is like, man, if that's a war, for an analogy, right? There's a lot of hills that have battles going on. And I realized that my gift sets and strengths were in going like, if I just focus in a local community and work on helping kids get out of poverty, that's a battle hill that I could get up and go climb every single day, versus like there's other things that are super meaningful, right? Trying to cure cancer or trying to do whatever else. There's other things that are really, really important that I don't have the skill sets or whatever. If I tried to go climb that hill, like I would be useless, you know what I'm saying? And I wouldn't have the energy for it into that space. So understanding who I am and understanding my wiring, my gifting allowed me to tie that macro purpose into my personal wiring and gifting into that space. And you'll find me up on that hill every single day.
On that note, what hill will you be on? What do you have cooking for the next few months and next few years? How do you see city leadership growing from here?
Man, we're really trying to scale video. We're launching Choose 911 TV on YouTube. We're launching Kids 911 TV, which is a big secret, but I don't think many people in Memphis are going to see this necessarily before I get that out in the next couple of months. So hopefully, and then so we're really trying to get more video content, really trying to go video first, and then rip all the text and content out of that space. But we're also trying to scale our alumni program. We're in conversations with the University of Memphis to take on, they have their own private school system. I say it's not private, it's a public school system they manage underneath that. It's called University Schools. And so we'd bring on another 1,000 K through 12 and another 100 graduates a year. And so that would be another big piece of the puzzle. Those are kind of immediate. But I think in the long term, man, I'm just really open to put myself out of business. I mean, that would be my dream, is that there's just a tipping point of enough Memphians who live every single day taking initiative for the benefit of others in a way where you don't need a catalytic response to that at all, or a catalytic creator for that. But there's just so much happening in so many different ways, and there's enough momentum that, man, I'm not needed. That would be my dream. If 10 years from now, if I could tell you that I'm unemployed and I need to come, if you got a job for me or something, or some of your students want to hire me to do something, that would be awesome.
What's your greatest need right now as an organization?
Man, we need people to, come visit Memphis, come check it out, come experience it for yourself, tell other people about their positive experiences of it. If you are a Memphian, you need to be, have people come share, come check us out. And then I just challenge people, come invest a season, come intern a summer, come spend a year or two of your career there. You will not regret it. I'm not asking anybody to come spend the rest of their life there, but they might end up wanting to do that, like me. But man, if you just come invest a season, whether you're 22 and want to come spend a year or two, or you're 65 and retiring and don't know where you're going to invest a season of your life, we have a lot of frontline space. And so if you want to make a difference for a while and experience what that's like, Memphis is a good place to do it. That'd be my biggest need. I'll take as many of those people as possible. You can call me directly right here on my cell phone, and I will answer, and I'll help you figure it out. So
that's great. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
cityleadership.org is our website. cityleadership.org. Choose911.com is our big thing. On either one of those, you can find all our other campaigns. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the kind of things. I'm John Carroll 77. John, JOHN CARROLL 77 on almost every platform.
John, thank you so much for coming, man. I really appreciate it. I know my students will get a lot out of this, and anybody else that's watching will too. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate y'all.